Today's microlearning is on the power of sleep, 10 tips to help you get a better night's sleep. Morgan Adams is a holistic sleep coach helping adults who struggle with getting a good night's sleep. She's a former insomniac who spent a decade using prescription sleeping pills. She's also a two-time breast cancer survivor. First question is, what are the benefits of sleep?
There are so many. There's not like one aspect of our life that sleep is not touched. Let's just start with the physical aspects. When we're getting good sleep, we are getting really a good brain cleansing. So when we're in our deep sleep phase, we have a cleansing that happens in our brain, which is pretty amazing. We have a lymphatic system. We've all heard of the lymphatic system. There's a lymphatic system that was recently discovered not that long ago. So you're cleansing your brain in the best way possible at night. With your cardiovascular health, you're getting benefits with that. You are helping to regulate your hunger and sex hormones. With mental health, there are also a lot of other benefits. Emotional and stress regulation, learning and memory is increased when you have really good sleep. And one thing that is not talked about enough that I want to shine a light on is how it affects our social life and our interpersonal life. When you are getting good sleep, you are more apt to have empathy, the ability to relate well with others, and you're more willing to solve conflict. So it really, good sleep encompasses all aspects of our health and our life.
And so what are some of the things that we can do proactively, maybe with our environment, etc., to get more sleep or better sleep?
Yes. So we really want to pay attention to our bedroom environment. And the way I like to describe this to folks is think of your bedroom as a cave, okay? Caves are cool, dark, and quiet. So with the cool aspect, you're looking at probably the best temperature around mid-60s. When your body is cool, you are better able to fall asleep and maintain sleep. So lowering your thermostat is a great idea for that. And then with the quiet aspect, you want to make sure that you have eliminated any potential noise distractions. A lot of times people will use earplugs, especially when they travel, because you can't control what's around you in your hotel and Airbnb. And also a white noise machine is really helpful. I have one in my bedroom. And if you travel and want the white noise, there are many apps you can use for that. And then the dark aspect, we really know through recent studies that when we sleep in a pitch dark environment, it's better for our metabolic and cardiovascular health. So we want to make sure that we have really basically the room so dark that if you held your hand up like this, you really couldn't see your hand because it's so dark in the room. So ways to achieve that would be to invest in blackout curtains or shades. These days they have portable ones, so you can buy them and travel with them, which is genius. I like to travel with an eye mask that I wear when I'm sleeping because, again, when you're in a hotel or an Airbnb, you sometimes don't know the situation with the blinds, so you have that extra protection. So those are really the basics about how to keep your bedroom in a way that is suitable for sleeping.
In the comments, a few people mentioned screen time, social media as being a kind of deterrent. I've heard people recommend not having a TV or your cell phone in your bedroom. Do you prescribe to that? What is your recommendation?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. So my take on the phone in the bedroom while you're sleeping is I think you should just have it out of the bedroom completely. And a lot of people try to fight me on this when I'm working with them because a lot of people use their phones as an alarm. Okay, but there's an easy solution. Before phones, what do we use? We use an alarm clock. So getting just a regular alarm clock or maybe one of the alarm clocks that has like a daytime simulator that gradually produces light so that wakes you up instead of a jarring alarm sound. Also, if your phone is by your bed, even if it's on airplane mode, you still have that EMF problem, the electromagnetic frequency issue. You don't want that around your sleeping environment. Also, one of the downsides of having the phone at arm's reach in bed is that if you do wake up at 2 or 3 a.m., what do a lot of people like to do? They like to placate themselves and try to get back to sleep by scrolling. And that is going to have the opposite effect, because if you're sitting there with your phone in your hand, you've got the blue light shining on you, and that's going to impede your melatonin. I really do strongly recommend that people just put their phone in another room. If they absolutely 100% need the phone for an alarm, they could maybe put it in a closet or a bathroom nearby so that they can hear the alarm. As far as TVs, I also don't really recommend having a TV in the bedroom. I know that sometimes, like with partners, there's a difference of opinion often, and one partner wants the TV in the bedroom and the other doesn't. But if you must have a TV in your bedroom and you are watching it at night, I would definitely recommend that you have a timer set so that it goes off at a certain point in time, because what they have shown recently is that the light from the TV is not good for your metabolic health, nor is the sound can wake you up and really disturb your sleep. And the TV topic is an interesting one, because a lot of people have found out, I'm very open about it, I watch TV at night as part of my wind down routine. So I don't tell people don't watch TV at night at all, because there is actually a way you can watch TV at night without it impacting your sleep. And so I'll share the tips for people that want to watch TV on a regular TV, like an old-fashioned TV. You don't want to have your laptop like this looking at it. So you want to be fairly far away from the TV, and you want to make sure that you are choosing content that is not arousing, controversial, scary. Like, you really want to have content that's vanilla. Some of the things that I find are really pleasurable to watch and not upsetting or controversial would be like food shows, or Ted Lasso is a
So
great.
no true crime.
No, none of that. You don't
Which is
want
what I
any of that.
normally watch at night for some reason.
Yeah, I've personally found that shows like that do keep me up, or I'm just like ruminating on the bad things that happen. You don't have to like abandon TV watching at night by any stretch. In fact, I was looking at a recent survey, Sleep Foundation, they did a poll of people's top bedtime rituals, and 52% of people watch TV before bed. So it's a really common activity, but we just need to be really mindful of like how we're approaching our TV watching. And one other thing about the TV watching is we can get really hooked into the Netflix, the autoplay. So if you're going to watch a show, disable the autoplay, set a curfew as to like when you're going to stop watching TV, because you could just go on and on. It's quite addictive, that Netflix.
No, and also I'm glad you mentioned the whole issue with screen times too, because the whole algorithms, they make it so addictive with the autoplay where, you're like, oh, I'll just watch this and then watch this next episode.
Yes.
And it's just interrelated, and they actually make it so it's sticky and addictive.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Bridget in the comments has all TV timers have an ability to shut the TV off at a specific time. That's a good idea.
Great idea.
And then Marie Fahy has a question, I guess, related to the screens as well. So she's read a lot of responses about blue light exposure from your phone. And I know sometimes people wear those
blue light blocking glasses.
Exactly.
Yes.
What's your take on that?
Yes. So I am wearing a pair of blue light blocking glasses. These have very light yellow, but they make them in different tints, different styles. At night when I am watching TV, I forgot to mention this, I am wearing the dark red shades. And so there is a little bit of controversy about how well the blue light blocking glasses work. Some people claim it works really well for them. Some people don't seem to be as affected, but I find that they make me sleepy if I'm wearing them for over half an hour. And in my opinion, I feel like it's a good safety measure in case you are getting exposed to too much blue light. And it's not always the blue light at night that is a problem. We tend to like hone in so much on the blue light, but we need to also remember that there are other like lighting fixtures in our house that can be really bright, like the bright LED overhead lights. Those can be a culprit and messing up our melatonin production. So we really need to be mindful about the whole light environment and like dimming those overhead lights or shutting them off, clicking on like a dim table light instead of the bright lights. So we just want to be careful. And if we are on our phone or our computer, because maybe we have to work, they have a lot of light filtering types of settings on computers and phones that you can adjust the light to make the light a little bit warmer and a little bit dimmer. So I would suggest that as well.
So do you wear your blue blockers all day or only like after a certain period of time?
These are actually designed for daytime use. They block a little bit of blue light, and they're really good for eye strain. So these are called circadian rhythm glasses, circadian therapy glasses. The orange ones I wear like after dinner, so like in the early evening, and then when I watch TV, 8ish, that's when the red ones go on.
So you
So
do this.
every day. Yeah. And I even went as far as this is how obsessed I am about my own personal belief about how it works for me. And everyone is different. So I suggest that everyone experiment. But when I was in the hospital getting my mastectomy a year and a half ago, I was very well aware how those bright hospital lights are. So I packed along with me a pair of the blue blocking glasses and put them on while I was in the recovery room and getting ready to go home, because I knew I didn't want to be kept up awake at night because those hospital lights are very bright. So I will take them to the airport. If I have people over at night and it's getting late, I'll put them on. They know me well enough to know I'm not that weird, but a little weird, but not over the top.
So tell me a little bit about your kind of history, because I mean, how you became a sleep coach, but also the fact that you had sleep issues for almost a decade and was taking medication.
Yes.
What was your aha moment to stop the medication and become a sleep coach? And what is a sleep coach?
Yes. Oh, good questions. It was several years ago that I had a bout of insomnia, and that bout lasted 8 years. I didn't really know what to do about it. And I ended up taking sleeping pills for 8 years. And the consequences of the sleeping pills for me really were not good in the daytime. I was very groggy. I didn't really become fully awake till lunch. And it started to impact my work. I had a job where I had to be like on the spot to respond to crises by writing a press release or whatever. And there were times when something would go down at work and I just was frozen. I couldn't type. My mind was just mush. I would have binge eating episodes that I didn't recall. So there were just a lot of consequences with the sleeping pills, but I just didn't know of any other way out. And then 8 years into that sleeping pill dependence, I met my current husband, who was then a new boyfriend. And he said to me, just out of love, hey, when you take these pills, you act like a zombie and it's freaking me out. And that was really my wake up call to make a change. And so I did what I don't recommend people do. I took myself off of the pills. It was very hard to do. So for anyone listening who is on sleeping pills and who wants to get off of them, I really strongly suggest that you go to your prescribing provider, who should be able to provide some kind of a tapering off schedule for you, because it really should be done with supervision. In addition, I would also work with a sleep coach, because the sleep coach will give you that accountability and support as you're going off the sleeping pills, because the doctor is probably not going to have the bandwidth to hold your hand through it. So because I obviously had a very difficult time with insomnia, I got better. I was able to get off the sleeping pills. And I slept fine for quite a few years. And then I started to have sleep issues again. And I got really concerned because I did not want to go back to full-blown insomnia. So I started to really research sleep, and I bought myself an Oura ring to track my sleep. And I was able to get things back on an even keel. And I was so excited about the turnaround that I had that I started to share just organically on Facebook things I was doing to improve my sleep. And I came to find out that a lot of people in my social circle were struggling as well during this time. And I thought, this is really interesting. And I got probably toward the end of 2020, I just had a revelation that I needed to help people with their sleep. And I was like, I'm going to become a sleep coach. Okay, great. That's a really valiant kind of idea. But at the time, there's not a lot of training for sleep coaches. There are some programs, some certifications. What I did was I got a health coaching certification because I wanted a general overview, just a training for health and the coaching part as well. And then I took several different more specific sleep science certification courses to round out what I learned in health coaching school. And a lot of times people are like, what the heck is a sleep coach? That's so strange. Like, it's a kind of a new area of expertise. And the easiest way to describe it is really like a personal trainer for sleep, the way somebody has a personal trainer for their fitness. So the sleep coach is there to provide support and accountability, because a lot of times what people are needing to do is make the behavioral changes, putting the phone away before you go to bed, stopping the caffeine, stopping the alcohol too close to bed. The sleep coach is there to walk you through that, devise a plan, devise a morning and evening routine suitable for you. There's so many things a sleep coach can do, but that's how I do it. I have more of a holistic approach so that I can help people either get off the sleeping pills with the help of their doctor, or prevent them from actually having to go on a medication, because most people don't really want to do that. They really would like to use holistic methods to help their sleep.
Yeah, and there's a few comments about like people wanting to use drugs as a sleeping aids as a last resort. So you mentioned trackers, or yes. I have an Oura ring as well.
Okay.
What's interesting, and from talking to friends, I don't know the science behind it, but the issue with sleeping aids, sleeping pills, is that you might be getting superficial sleep, but you might not be getting REM or deep sleep, which is the sleep you need to repair and heal. And so that was like a big aha for me, because I got into a depressive state and I was sleeping 14, 15 hours, but I would wake up feeling just really groggy and tired. And I didn't have the tracker at that time, but I would think, my belief is I didn't get a lot of deep sleep, right? It was very restless. Like I would wake up in the middle of the night and then I would scroll and I would sleep, wake up, sleep, wake up. It wasn't good sleep. Are trackers valuable, and would you recommend it to the folks who are on this call?
Yeah, I find trackers like this, the Oura, there's the Whoop, there's the Fitbit, there's Apple. There are several different wearable sleep trackers on the market. And I find that generally speaking, they are very useful for most people. And they're most useful for people who are able to look at their data and make behavioral changes accordingly. So for example, I'll use myself. If I have alcohol, I can clearly see that my deep sleep suffers, my recovery scores suffer. And that actually, for me, is motivating enough to either not have alcohol or reduce it significantly. So if you're the kind of person who can look at the data and you're able to make the connection and change your behavior, I think it's an excellent tool. I would like to say, though, that people can get a little overboard sometimes with the obsession about the trackers, especially when they're looking at their sleep staging, which is looking at the REM and the deep sleep staging. The sleep trackers are notoriously inaccurate for tracking the deep and REM phases. They're about 50 to 60% accurate. So we really don't know for sure by looking at our tracker the amount of deep and REM we're getting. However, Oura has improved their algorithm to make it a lot more accurate. I am an affiliate with Oura, so I am a little biased, and I do talk about it a little bit more, but I applaud them for updating the algorithm to reflect the more accurate stages of our sleep. And one more thing I'll say about sleep trackers is that with my clients, who typically are mostly people with insomnia, and those folks tend to have a lot of anxiety about their sleep, a lot of worry and rumination. And a lot of those folks don't do well with a sleep tracker. So I carefully screen my clients who don't have a sleep tracker and are thinking about getting one, because I'm able to tell with their personality. And if they know themselves, they're able to determine whether or not looking at the data will make them even more anxious about their sleep. Because really the bottom line is that we want to focus in on how we feel physically and mentally about our sleep versus what the tracker tells us. Because we know from studies that sometimes a tracker will say we didn't have a good night of sleep, And we actually did. And then we start doubting ourselves. Maybe I shouldn't be feeling as good if my sleep tracker said. So it can mess with your head if you don't look at it appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was going through that too, where I was trying to optimize too much, but at the end of the day, it was getting me more stressed, which made it harder for me to fall asleep, right? Like I would
Yes.
wake up in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh no, I'm impacting my deep sleep.
Yes, that's case in point. That's exactly the downside of it. So you really have to, I think, know yourself and know your triggers and know your personality to see if you're a good fit for a sleep tracker.
Yeah. For those on the call that aren't familiar, there's different stages of sleep: REM sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, etc. But little nuances like what when you go to sleep impact, because you want to get into deep sleep, and if you go to sleep past your window and if it's too late, sometimes it's harder to fall asleep, or you just have light sleep. And for cases of, I think about my mom who has dementia, um, even though she's sleeping all day, she has a lot of light sleep. So she's not getting that enough sleep to repair her brain. There's
Mm.
little things that, as you research it a little bit more, that might be beyond this call. If this is something that you're really interested, I would recommend researching the different stages of sleep and how it impacts you and your health. Because if you have cancer, if you have health issues, getting enough sleep is so important. So I have a few comments here, and you mentioned the whole caffeine issue because I'm a caffeine addict. And Bridget Trusty in the comments is scaring me because she says caffeine takes about 12 hours to leave your system. And her
True.
question is it safer to just have a cup in the morning? By bedtime, the caffeine is gone. So, any recommendations on caffeine?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that
The
up
other
because
drug.
the other drug, it's the most used drug in the world, caffeine. And I did have my cup of coffee this morning. I don't think that most of us need to give up caffeine to have good sleep, but we need to really be careful about when we cut ourselves off. I call it a caffeine curfew. And so generally speaking, I would recommend that most people cut off their caffeine by around noon because it does stay in your system for quite a while, about 10 hours or so. And I will see people from time to time who will have coffee after dinner and they're like, doesn't impact my sleep. And they get to sleep fine. But if you were to measure with a polysomnography, you would see that their deep sleep does get impacted. They do get fragmented sleep and they don't realize it. And they wake up tired the next morning only to have even more caffeine. So it becomes a very vicious cycle over time. So I would recommend noon being the cutoff. And we do know that some people's genetics respond to caffeine differently. Some people clear caffeine more quickly than others. So I usually err on the side of caution with my clients and recommend that they cut themselves off around noon.
Wow. As you can see,
Cheers.
I still have my cup of coffee.
Well, you're almost there. You're just past the curfew.
Switch to decaf.
Yeah.
So Will Sullivan in the comments has a question about melatonin. Does
Yeah.
melatonin work? What's your opinion on melatonin?
So melatonin has a little bit of a controversy. There isn't a whole lot of data showing that it's super helpful for sleep or insomnia. What I read is that it helps you get to sleep maybe 7 minutes quicker, and you might get eight minutes more of sleep a night, which is really not anything to write home about. Where it is most effective and useful is for jet lag or circadian rhythm disorders. And there's different schedules that you can follow for that are way too in depth for this conversation. But a lot of people use melatonin because it's so readily available and it's relatively safe as a hormone to take. However, people need to be very careful about the source of the melatonin that they get. And so what they did a few years ago is they had a study where they pulled random bottles of melatonin off the shelves. And what they found was that there was probably 70% of the bottles had a wide variance in terms of how much was in the bottle versus how much was advertised on the label. So you could get much less or a lot more. And if you got a 3 milligrams of melatonin or 5 milligrams, and it had a lot more, you could potentially be getting too much melatonin and having grogginess in the morning, because that's one of the side effects of too much melatonin is being groggy in the morning. So if people do want to use melatonin for sleep, I would recommend that they look at brands that are USP certified. And USP basically means that they have been tested so that the amount of melatonin in the bottle matches what is advertised. So it's really a buyer beware situation out there with melatonin. What I'm finding is that just in a general store or grocery store or whatever, the amount of melatonin is quite high, like they're selling 3 and 5. Really, you want to dose a lot lower than that.
How about melatonin for kids?
That's a really controversial topic as well. And the experts that I look to don't recommend that. The sleep doctors do not recommend that because it is a hormone. However, I believe in certain cases where maybe there's autism, I think it might be used in specific situations, but I don't think the average child should really be getting melatonin because it is a hormone. So I would proceed with caution about that.
Awesome. We had some questions. Denise, you had a great question in the chat.
Oh, the one about exercise?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if if you think daily exercise helps. I exercise a lot for other reasons, but I do think it helps, but I'd love to hear your opinion.
It absolutely helps. Studies show it. It helps with how fast it takes to get to sleep, our sleep efficiency, our sleep quality. I read or heard a Matthew Walker podcast recently. He's a really well-known sleep scientist. He did a series all about exercise, and he talked about a study where they were looking at older adults, and they were looking at whether aerobic or weight training was better for sleep. And in this particular study on older adults, they showed that aerobic activity was more helpful for their sleep. They also showed that moderate aerobic activity was more helpful than high intense. So a lot of times we think, oh, more is better. Let's go hard at this exercise. It might help us sleep better. That's not always the case. And especially as we get older. So I definitely recommend for my clients to have some amount of activity, physical activity every day. And I think one of the best things that we can do really for our sleep health is take outdoor walks, especially in the morning, because you're really habit stacking. You're able to get your exercise in as well as that sunlight exposure in the morning, which is so critical to regulate and strengthen your circadian rhythm. So yeah, I'm a huge proponent of exercise for sleep health. Absolutely.
So I've read a lot about the importance of getting like that early morning sunlight as soon as you wake up.
Yeah.
Why is that important? And how about for people who are in the Northeast who you're not getting sunlight for 4 or 5 months in the year?
Yeah. So the reason why it's really important to get sunlight as soon as you can is because when the sun hits your retina, it sends a signal to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is your circadian pacemaker. And that basically sets a cascade of hormones and neurotransmitter balance. So it like shuts off any remaining melatonin left over from the night before. It boosts your cortisol to give you energy. It boosts your serotonin to prepare you for the following night as far as like melatonin production. So it's a very beautiful symphony of neurotransmitter and hormone release that you can only get with the sunlight. Okay, so in the example that you shared about people who live in the Northeast and areas where there's just not a lot of sun, a substitution, not a direct substitution, but a second best type of thing would be what they call a sad light or a light box. So they're quite inexpensive. I have one literally sitting above me to shine light on me. Otherwise, I'd take it down and show you, but they're about this big. And you want one that is 10 lux that provides enough light. So what you do is you just sit in front of it for about 20 minutes in the morning. Maybe you could have it in front of you while you eat breakfast. You could have it in the bathroom while you're getting ready for work. So it's a good substitute, but it's not quite the amount of bright light.
Can you repeat what that light is called? And can you just buy it on Amazon or at the store?
So things you would want to Google: Happy Light or SAD lights. SAD stands for seasonal affective disorder. Mm-hmm. So it's often used for treatment of seasonal affective disorder.
That's amazing that how important just sunlight or just walking out in nature can be such a boost.
Yes.
So Sharon King says, I moved from California to Virginia and my vitamin D levels are super low and my sleep went to crap. And it's been 10 years. Oh my gosh. So yes, in lines with that, like taking vitamins. Kathy, you have a great question. Do you want to unmute and ask your question as well?
About the valerian.
Yes.
I totally agree on the melatonin. And I think it's the Wild West and it is buyer beware and it concerns me. But what about herbals? Or is it the same scenario of you really have to be careful?
I don't think the issue is quite as severe with the herbals, the valerian. I would say, though, that whatever supplement or vitamin you're using is to get it from a reputable source. If you have a practitioner who has an online dispensary, I recommend doing that because sometimes you just don't know the quality. Like, for example, Costco and Sam's, I'm just not sure of the quality of their supplements. I personally wouldn't use that because we don't know. But I don't, as far as something as benign as a valerian root or something herbal like that, it's probably not a huge problem. But yeah, we need to be smart shoppers with supplements for sure.
You talk to a lot of different clients that are having like sleep issues for various reasons. What are some of the bad habits that are the main culprits that
Ooh,
are impacting their
yes.
sleep? Because I think it's helpful to learn what to do, but also what not to do.
Yes. One of the biggest bad habits that I see, and we touched on it earlier, is scrolling social media at night. A lot of people will have their phone by their bed, scroll TikTok, Instagram. You just go down the rabbit hole when you do that. So I recommend that people just put their phone away at night, maybe an hour before they go to bed so that they're not tempted. Another thing that I see people doing quite a bit is having very inconsistent sleep and wake times. We really want to make sure that we're as consistent as possible, especially with our wake time. That is like one of the best sleep tips ever, is to have that regularity in your wake time. And that means even on the weekends. People are like, what? I can't sleep in. So what ends up happening, for example, if you were to get up at 6 a.m. every morning for work, Monday through Friday, and then you go out Friday and Saturday till midnight, you might sleep in till 9. That gives you like a 3-hour differential. What you're essentially doing is you're giving yourself social jet lag, which feels like jet lag, but you haven't traveled anywhere. So really, if you are out late on the weekend, it's okay to probably sleep in maybe a half an hour or so, but you're really getting in that kind of danger zone when you're going like 2 hours, 3 hours, because your body and your brain with sleep crave consistency. The more consistent you can be, the better your body will respond and your sleep will just become a lot more solid. And as far as like at night, people sometimes get a little bit too dogmatic about an exact bedtime. Like my bedtime is at 9 or my bedtime is at 10. I really recommend that you give yourself a window of an hour to go to bed, because if you give yourself like a 9 o'clock bedtime, you may not be sleepy until 9:30 one night. And if you get into bed at 9 and you're hardly sleepy at all, you might end up becoming really frustrated. And you definitely don't want that. So if you are getting up regularly at a certain time every morning, the chances of being sleepy 16 hours later are going to be greater because you've got that anchored morning wake up time. So the consistency is really important. I don't think a lot of people realize that, because when I work with clients, we do a sleep journal, and I'll see lots of variance within like their sleep and wake time. So we really work hard on making things a little bit tighter.
So what do we do? I feel like there's so much going on in the world right now between layoffs, bank crashes, the economy, you name it. How has stressing anxiety impacted sleep? And then what can we do to mitigate it? Because it's a vicious cycle, because you're stressed, you don't sleep. And because you don't sleep, your stress and anxiety gets worse. Yes. I know for me, when I don't get enough sleep, it toggles between depression and sadness, and it's like a vicious cycle.
Yes.
How do you get yourself outside of that loop?
Yeah, this is like one of the most common things that I work on with my clients, because most sleep problems I think are rooted in anxiety and stress. And so we really need to address that. One of the things that I like to teach people is a really accessible exercise. It's called the constructive worry exercise. So this is really good for you if you get into bed and start to have all of these things pop into your mind. Your brain is racing with, what about this? What about that? The worries, the concerns of the day. So what you do for this exercise is probably around dinner time. Most of my clients like to do this after dinner in the early evening. Is you take a sheet of paper, you draw a line down the center of the paper. On the left-hand side column, you write worries and concerns. On the right-hand side column, you write solutions. And you basically just brain dump for about 20 minutes, writing down a worry and then the next step that you can take to solve that worry or concern. And sometimes there is no solution. For example, a world crisis, layoffs, you're not going to be able to solve that in one fell swoop. So you might just write, we'll have to revisit, no answer for this. And then what you're doing with this exercise is you're getting all of this stuff out of your head onto paper so that when you wake up at night or when you're trying to fall asleep, you can tell yourself, if the worries start to creep back up, hey, I've dealt with my worries for the day. I've had my worry time and I'm going to resume worrying tomorrow. So it's very structured. Another thing that I like to encourage people to do is to practice mindfulness. And a lot of times that mindfulness will come to mind as evening meditation, like before bed meditation, which is great. But I really encourage people to start mindfulness from the second they wake up and to take what I call mindfulness snacks throughout the day. So take some breaks, take a walk outside without any technology, take a break and meditate, take a break and do some breath work. So plug these little mindfulness snacks in throughout your day. I'm telling you, even using, no matter how busy you are, you have to go to the bathroom several times a day. So if you are super busy and you use the bathroom, use that 1 minute to do some deep breaths or to just take a pause, because we really need to take that break and practice some mindfulness so that we can mitigate those stresses throughout the day so they don't accumulate over the day and then spill into the evening.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is by B.J. Fogg. He is a scientist at Stanford, but he talks about tiny habits.
Yes.
And so one of the things he recommended was tying something that you do, like brushing your teeth, going to the bathroom, and then tying it with a good habit, right? So it's something that you do regularly. Or, for example, for me, as soon as I wake up or when I go to sleep, I in my mind run through 10 things I'm grateful for, what I have. So it forces me to do this on a regular basis, like brushing your teeth. So you connect something that you do regularly with a good habit. So I like that habit of going to the bathroom and meditating or breathing or whatnot. I think breathing is so important and we don't think about it because we just take it for granted, but it's so important for just our living, right? We can't live with that if we don't breathe. Yeah. Kathy in the comments says, about the stress and all this other stuff, that everything that I just described used to occur over weeks, but months, but now they occur literally daily, right? And I don't know if that's necessarily the case though, Kathy. I think these things were always happening. It's just now we have social media. Now we have 24-hour news. So these bad things in the world were always happening. We just didn't hear about what was happening in Ukraine or whatnot. We would read about it. But now it's like we get notifications and pings and texts, and it's like constant barrage of negative news, right? And what sells is negative news, so you get more of it. But I think you hit a really good point, Morgan, which is write down the things that you can control and what you can't control. If you can't control it, having it in here is not going to help the world. I am not going to cure cancer or hunger by worrying about it in here. But I have control over what I eat, what chemicals are in my house, right? Focus on the things focus on the controllables, because when you focus on things that are not in your domain of control, you are just basically setting yourself up for more stress and angst.
Yeah. And I just to piggyback on that, you're right. There is so much There's so much opportunity for us to get stressed by what we see on the news. And I like to urge people to take like a news media hiatus. You don't need to check in every 3 hours. There's no need for that. So really managing your news consumption, I think, can be very helpful because it's all around us. The headlines are triggered to make you scared, anxious, and that's not what we're looking for.
I love that. And so leaving this on a positive note, what are some of the things that we can do, like in terms of a nighttime routine, or what can we do? What are the proactive things we can do today, starting now, that's going to set us up for success?
Yeah. So just to recap, because we've already gone over some of these things, but the waking and being exposed to the sun every morning is really one of the number one. Exercise daily, a very important tip. The regularity of the wake ups and trying to get to bed within a consistent time frame, trying to keep a caffeine curfew, an alcohol curfew. We really didn't talk too much about that, but really trying to make sure that you're giving yourself an alcohol curfew as well of at least 3 hours. And same thing with dinner. We really want to make sure that we give our bodies time to digest, because if we go to bed with a full stomach, it's going to prioritize digestion over sleep. So if you can try to be more mindful about when you eat dinner, that can be very helpful because a lot of people are eating really too late. Those are some tips. Trying to think of some more.
How important is diet and what we eat?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Thank you for bringing that up. There's no magic food or anything like that. If there were, we'd know by now. But what data has shown is that a diet that is primarily a Mediterranean style diet seems to be very sleep conducive to a lot of people. A lot of it is because there's fruits and vegetables in it. There's omega-3 fatty acids. So if you like Mediterranean food, that's great. Eat more of that. Fatty fish, legumes, nuts, seeds, kiwi, tart cherries are all foods that have been shown in some studies to be sleep promoting. But again, I think the timing of our food intake is extremely important. And I mentioned with the eating dinner, trying to give yourself that 3-hour buffer between dinner and going to bed and trying not to snack. That can be a big source. Like a lot of people will have like cookies and ice cream right before bed. That wrecks your deep sleep and it makes you too hot. So you do have those awakenings at night. Another thing that I'll share about sleep and food is we really want to make sure that we start our day and continue our day with good blood sugar balance. So when you're thinking about breakfast, you want to think about something that's got a fair amount of protein and fat and a little bit of carb, but you don't want to just have a breakfast of straight up pancakes, because that's just what we call naked carbs. That really spikes your glucose, and your blood glucose is like this all day. You want a nicer level. So really, when you're thinking about meals, prioritizing protein, having some fat, having some complex carbs, minimizing sugar. So those are some basics about how to balance blood sugar. But we find that when our blood sugar is balanced throughout the day, it does help our sleep at night.
I love that. I think we have time for one more question. Patricia Maldonado question. Is 8 hours of sleep the goal? I find myself more rested when I get a little more like 9 or 10, but it could also mean that I'm not getting enough deep sleep.
Yeah, this is a great question because there's a lot of pressure, I think, sometimes by headlines about getting 8 hours of sleep. And the recommendation for adults 18 to 64 is 7 to 9 hours. So the reason why everyone talks about 8 is because I think 8 is right in the middle of 7 and 9. But what we really need to understand is that our sleep needs are individual. It's like a shoe size, right? So we don't all have the same size shoe. We're not going to all have the same amount of sleep that we need. So we really need to figure out what is best for us and then try to honor that. Some people need a little more than 8 hours of sleep. Some people need 9. Some people do just great with a little under 7. But when you're getting below like 6, it's a slippery slope. And of people.
So we have tons of questions. So one last question.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on nap? So Anne has this question, good or bad idea? I feel like I really need sleep on the weekend to catch up. What are your thoughts on naps?
I think naps are a good practice. If you're going to take a nap, I would advise taking a short nap, 20, 30 minutes. If you go much longer than that, you might experience something called sleep inertia. That's when you wake up from a nap. I think we've all experienced this when you're really groggy or irritable. What's happened is you have gone into a deeper phase of sleep and you've been woken up. So you want to take the nap for a short period of time so that you're not getting into a deep phase of sleep. Naps in early afternoon have been shown to help memory, encourage learning, creativity. So I think they're great, but I think it's probably better for most people to use it as an as needed basis. So for example, if you have a sleep debt, and we all experience sleep debt from time to time, even if we're really conscientious about our sleep, we may want to go to a concert and we want to live our lives. We want to have it fun and enjoy people. So we need to accept the fact that there's some nights we're just not going to get the amount of sleep we need. And one thing we can do to make the next day easier is to catch a small, like a short nap. Yeah.
So last question, how can we help you? How can we find you? Is the best way to find you on LinkedIn? Tell us where to find you, your website URL, how we can support you, etc.
I'm everywhere. No, I feel like I'm everywhere. I am on LinkedIn, quite active on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as well. And my website is morganadamswellness.com. I offer a free mini course that I just developed called the Sleep Reset Solution. And I also offer complimentary sleep clarity calls for anyone who is struggling and wants to talk about potentially working together.